Mm. 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 Hey, welcome back to the channel, guys. I've known Rumeal for a really long time, and we're very, passionate about game of tennis. We've played a lot of tennis against a very wide range of opponents from different backgrounds, and I feel like there is a lot of value that, we always have great conversations about it. And then because we're involved in it so much that I feel like we can, benefit a little bit the tennis community with, some insights or some giving you some new perspectives or, the things that we think about when it comes to, tennis opportunities, the tennis game itself. Maybe talk a little bit about my background versus his background when it comes to French and American tennis. Rumeal also happens to be a long-time coach, and coaching in tennis is a big thing. So I feel like I just want to make a little bit of a different format to explore these. I don't want to do this voice over me playing a long match, because then I think it's going to be too distracting. So if you like this video, let me know in the comment below. Mr. Sets, thank you for doing this. Great. Okay. Highlights versus full.
Which do I prefer?
What? Yes. What do you?
It depends. It depends on how much, what my bandwidth is in that moment. Right. It also depends on what's my purpose.
Yes.
Is my intention to sit down and take in the full experience of a 5-setter?
Yeah.
Or is there a player that I really want to watch play? If I don't really have a set purpose, then I'm probably just gonna want to see the coolest shots.
Yeah.
I want to see the coolest points. Because it's entertaining. It's stimulating.
Yeah. No, I think that's exactly right. Is highlights is made for entertainment, and is also a way to just see a glimpse, 2, 3, 4 shots of the actual match. It just happened. So just instead of seeing just the score, you see a little bit of the venue, you see a little bit of the players, you see 2 or 3 cool shots, and then you move on to the next match. The problem that I have is, as entertaining as that is, it becomes the norm of this is what the main tennis content that people consume. And people, you could see on YouTube, they want longer highlights. They want more of those winners.
Yeah.
And because that is the main tennis content that people see from the pros. But the highlights is a highlight. And a highlight, by definition, is going to show you the most entertaining points, which is not the accurate picture of what actually happened in a match. So then it seems like those pros, all they do is hitting winners from crazy angles, hitting some very clean, low percentage shots. And then when we play tennis, that's what we want to do, because all we see is that, just those shots. But then what about that double fault that he just hit twice in a row in a random game? We don't see that. But then when we do it, it's like, oh, I suck at tennis. But no, if you actually look at the summary of the final, scoreboard, or the summary of all the numbers, you can tell it's 10 winners, 22 backhand and forced errors.
So I agree with you, and this might just be coming from our experience and how our experience has influenced what we want to see into the game and how we want to get people involved in the game. I can see it being an issue, but it's just sexy, right? It's a business.
Exactly.
It's a business.
Yes.
How would I want people, as Rumeal, how would I want people to get involved in the sport? I want them to get excited about it. I want them to love it.
Yeah.
But I also really want them to get serious about it. But I know that's not for everyone. So
you're right.
The problem I see, if I can sort of rephrase it, is when sex sells, but that's where it starts and ends. It's
Exactly.
like we're all trying to meet this unrealistic standard of
Yes.
play, of experience,
Yes.
when it's like we've missed all the layers,
Yes.
and all of the whatever it takes to get to that point, and then we're judging
Right. Exactly.
everything based on that
Yes.
standard. And it's like that's the gold standard for
Right.
a reason.
You're right. Yeah, we standardized
Yeah.
the highlights formats as being the new tennis.
Yeah.
Where in reality, the highlights should be the entertainment. That's where you watch if you want to see what happened. That's where you watch if you're on the time crunch. That's what, and there is no problem with that. But if you actually want to improve your game, you know, then you need to see a little bit beyond that and see the whole picture.
And so, like, for context, I think we say these things, or we have this perspective because people we run into in our lives, players, parents, you know, people who don't play the sport at all, but
Right.
feel they can, you know, offer their input
Yeah.
in a very particular way. Like, we hear people saying things like, I mean, what's the most ridiculous thing I've heard recently? Is like, here's a high school student is on the run trying to hit a forehand, and they do this consistently where they're on the run and they try to hit a forehand down the line for a winner, right? They're trying to smoke the ball.
Yeah.
And they're doing it while sliding. Like, you can tell that they're trying to do something very specific
Right.
for the highlight reel.
Mm-hmm.
And when you ask them, which I think everyone should be asking, like, what are you trying to do there? Tell me more about that decision that you're making. Either they can't explain to you the decision making process that led up to that moment, or they'll be honest and say, like, I wanted the point to be over. I wanted to win it right away. And it's like, okay, but like, do you know you have choices here? You know that's not the only way out, and also it doesn't have to be sexy. Like, you can win ugly. You can just play a safer shot, things like that. We see enough of that, and people who aren't really sure, how do I say this? Like, they need to look like the pros.
They need to look like their shots need to look.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
It's a beautiful. It's like they mastered the beauty,
Yeah,
shots.
Yeah,
in order to be effective.
And I would be a fool if I didn't admit that I do the same thing. And so, like, I'm watching
nobody
my
wants to be ugly looking.
Right,
That's for sure.
I'm watching my backhand,
Yeah.
and I'm comparing to Alcaraz's backhand or Djokovic's
Right.
backhand. I'm trying to find elements of it, but again, like this is coming from people who have been playing it for umpteen years and have some sort of coaching experience, and we know how to like to parcel out the mechanics that lead to this, that lead to that.
Right.
Like, we can figure out better ways to strike the ball, better ways to play, but we're not trying to put ourselves in a like, we're not trying to make ourselves become We're not trying to be Djokovic. We are, but we aren't. And without all of that, like, experience and knowledge, the average player has no business trying to be Djokovic, because one, they're not Djokovic, and there's so much beauty and stylistic preference.
Exactly.
Like, every player is going to hit the ball differently, just a little bit. Yeah. And every player probably has a different style and flavor.
Different bodies, different mechanics. Yes, absolutely.
And so, for me, the pain point is, even though we should hold ourselves to high standards, we should always be tempering our expectations or managing our expectations a little differently. Within the confines of your own body, of your own experience. Try to get here, but understand that you need to do things. You don't always have to do things the same way that they do it.
You don't need to fit a box.
Yeah.
You don't need to fit in a box.
Yeah, thank you. Don't put yourself in a box.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, okay, this is kind of how I understand it. After watching maybe tennis for 20 plus years, it seems to me that according to tennis laws or perception, Federer's technique is the gold standard. It becomes the ABC standard.
It is sexy.
Right.
Yeah.
And I feel like when people are judging other people's strokes, you have to judge it based on something. You don't judge it out of thin air. So that's what I'm saying. I think that people believe that Federer strokes are like the most aesthetically pleasing and very effective. This is what it is. And you're trying to get as close to that. So when you watch somebody else's play, you're going to try to say, let's try to like switch this thing or that thing to make it look like him. On the other hand, I also see that when a shot does not look sexy at all, does not look aesthetically pleasing, looks very unorthodox, people have big problems with that, regardless of how effective it is. And I think that's kind of what happened with Djokovic growing up, or players today, as in like Daniil Medvedev, who seems to have a very ugly looking game. Ugly has to be comparatively to something, right?
Yeah.
You cannot just say ugly, it has to be compared to something. So if you compare to Federer, yes, he doesn't look as good. But then Medvedev was number one in world in 2021. He also won a Grand Slam. He beats all these guys. So why is there such a thing in tennis where we get so caught up in the beauty of it, where clearly the shots are extremely effective? Pretty much saying people would rather buy a product because of its packaging than the product itself.
When you ask that question, I think of, we've been talking about how things are layered. There's so many different angles I could approach this with, not being the authority on any of it, but just culturally, I think there's something to say about how tennis is perceived within the confines of American culture, the U.S. culture. Come at it from like a social media or marketing standpoint. I think selling what is sexy is effective in its own ways. It's a means to an end. It gets more seats filled. It gets more people interested. And there's not really much of like a responsibility to advertise tennis as this iceberg sort of, is understand everybody that this is the gold standard, but it takes so much to get there. Like, that's not really what people will like. People aren't going to jump on that the same way. So on a deeper level, I think it's just very vain, right? Like this might be a bit of all of the systems sort of like intersect on this issue of vanity. What looks good is assumed to be good. What is sexy is sexy for a reason, because it's better, it's superior.
Right.
Like you said, I totally agree. There was a player from the Dakotas who, he was a hockey player. A young kid, he's a hockey player. Fantastic slap shot, ugliest backhand you've ever seen. Like it was exactly like, it was just very short, abbreviated, and he didn't follow through at all. And no matter how much coaches hounded on him, like he made it to state level, and I think he dang near won state because it was effective. Yeah. Consider who he's playing, the age group he's playing, where people were at developmentally. Like if you would have put that kid with his strokes at 4.550 level with adults, he probably wouldn't be able to. He wouldn't be successful as successful. But you put him against high school boys at his level. That stroke it dominated for the reasons that it dominated. Right. And it's like we need to be a bit more open-minded in general. And this kind of goes back to like why does sex sell? Why is it so effective? We're not as open-minded as we should be when it comes to differentiating the outcome versus the journey. Right. We always want to get to this, but we don't value and appreciate and respect what it takes to get there, let alone respect that there might be different paths to take that don't necessarily end up there, but end up somewhere that's just as successful. Yes.
We're not trying to be that particular player. Yeah. There is so many other things that can be done that maybe doesn't even exist as of today. It's not just a combination of, you try to have these guys forehand, and then that guy backhand, and then that guy serve, and if you can have all three, then you're like the best. Because chances are, in a few years, a new guy with a new backhand will be better than the previous one, and that's always what happens. And then he becomes a new standard. But for this guy to be the new standard, he had to learn to not copy, try to not be the carbon copy of the previous guy. However, like, he may have very much idolized that guy. He's not trying to be that guy. But I feel like at the recreational level, that's what we're trying to be. We're trying to be that guy.
And it's just such a fool's errand, because how stressful would it be
Extremely stressful.
to practice 1,000 hours of Djokovic's forehand, knowing you're not Djokovic, only to fail,
right?
And then to be upset that
you knew
failed.
that from the beginning, then you would probably, like, if that was like a written, then you probably like, okay, I'm done. I'm not even gonna try it.
Yeah. So
but we all believe that we're gonna get there at some point.
Culturally, maybe just I don't even really know how to label it, but we've talked about this before with younger students. All of you like the highlight reels. All of you are focused on winning. So you're mentally not even present for what's supposed. You're not present for the journey. Like, are you in every point? Are you fighting for every ball, or are you constantly thinking about what you're going to do after the match is over, or how you're going to win or lose? Like that, I feel like it just closes you off to the experience, and you're not. I don't know. You're just not. You're not developing a love for the game in a way that's going to benefit you. Yeah, and that's that's also acknowledging that it's not for everyone, but still, I find it healthier.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so you talked about cultural. Since we're from different backgrounds.
Yeah.
Now, just for the viewers, Rumeal did come to France a few times, and we played tennis there. And I feel like it could be, interesting to share your perspective. If you remember anything about playing in France versus playing in the US. Let's talk about, you remember that tournament that you played?
Yeah.
That was your very first time playing on the red clay.
Yep.
And for a lot of Americans, they probably never played on the red clay.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts?
Okay. I'm already folding my arms right here. I'm sitting back because I'm upset. All right, so acknowledge I've been a fool. The first match I played.
You can keep talking. I'm gonna get you some water.
It was super upsetting. It was frustrating. One, playing on a new surface. That's hard.
Yes.
I felt like a child though. I felt like I was learning how to walk all over again. I didn't have clay shoes, which I know you don't have to have clay shoes. Thank you.
It helps though.
It helps a lot. So I'm sliding all over, and one of my biggest strengths at that time, and still is like my athleticism.
Right.
Like I should be quick enough to get every ball, but I couldn't do it. No. So that was like my first level.
Because you're sliding around.
I'm sliding around. Yeah, it's all unstable. The second thing is I hit 19 double faults. 20. He was counting. 20 double faults. And I still won. And it's like...
The guy could not believe it at the end.
Oh,
he's like,
my
how
gosh.
in the world did this guy win? He gave me like 2 points in every single serve game, and I still lost. And I was like, how did you win this match? The guy cannot move. The guy cannot serve.
Yo,
he just won the match.
Let me just give you a visual for anybody out there who actually has eaten or tried a Warhead, those little candies that are super sour. On the packaging, you ever seen that dude with the face and he's got like the nuclear blast? His top
yeah.
That was me.
Right.
And I can't even imagine what he was like, but that was me. So the double faults, the not being able to move, and this is the first time, the first time in my life. Where I got so upset that I broke a racket.
Oh, I remember.
I broke a racket, which was like a cardinal sin for me.
Right.
I lost my composure in the worst of ways, and when I broke my racket, like that was me. I was broken.
Right.
And I also took my shirt, I put it in my mouth.
I remember that.
I ripped it, and it just I was a mess.
I remember that.
And it was a moment where I'm still trying to process it and understand how I can use that to my advantage. But I don't know, for me I think I put myself, I wanted to play a particular way.
Yes.
I wanted to play the American way.
Okay.
and there's something to say for that, right? Whatever had worked for me till then didn't work.
Right.
I'm in a new environment. I'm playing a totally different type of player. And the stress of my closed-minded approach to the match was too much. And knowing that it was overwhelming me, I should have been able to rely on mental fortitude.
Right.
But even that was breaking.
Right.
So now I've lost almost everything, and I snapped.
I do remember that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so what would you think is the biggest takeaway for somebody, let's say, for an American who's never played on a clay court, let's say first time that he plays on it, what would be a big takeaway? And for you, it's even worse because not only was your first time, but I threw you right into a tournament. It was not even a practice.
Yeah, no practice. Yeah. So first, practice.
We don't need practice.
Yeah.
That's where we do it.
I would say practice. Practice on the court. Like go to a clay court beforehand and actually feel the bounce. Understand what you can do. What are your options before you actually go in and put all this stress and expectation for you to perform in the same way that you perform on a hard court.
Yeah.
It's like be proactive. That's be proactive. Prepare for it in as many ways as you can, and understand that given this is if this is your first time in clay, given that this is a whole new experience, be curious and stay open-minded. Right. Don't. It's not always. It's not gonna go the way that you think it's gonna go, and that could be good or bad, right? Maybe you're stellar on clay. Maybe it really works out for you, but it still probably isn't going to. So stay curious, be as prepared as you can, and be open-minded to the experience because it really was fun. No matter how upset I got, it was super fun, and I would do it again. I would just.
We will.
Oh yeah. So.
Okay, so that's interesting. Okay, so a topic that I really want to cover now is the difference between playing in the US versus playing in France when it comes to, let's say, the structure and like the opportunities and most importantly the accessibility of tennis. Why in the US we have a lot of public courts, we also have a lot of country clubs. Why in the US it seems like it's just not easy? It takes a lot of money. It takes particular situations to even get the chance to be really good at tennis.
Okay, so a lot to say on that. At first glance, I was really surprised to see how community-based tennis was in France. Like, I mean, we went to the clubs or the clubs. The clubs. It was, to me, that was like a park with, like a little mini hub at the park.
You have like a little pro shops / a little bit of food here and there.
Yeah.
And that's how you get like book your courts and all that.
And this is just coming from somebody from the Midwest. Is we have parks, but parks aren't centered around a building with community-based programs, or they are, but it's not really taken advantage of in the way that
it's just the courts next to a lake, next to a walking trail.
It's like it's used recreationally, but there isn't really a foundation of community-based in it. For a lot of them, I know there are some parks that they're doing phenomenal when it comes to.
That's mostly the case. So you just drive by, you see the court, you just go in there.
It's very distant relationally.
Right.
So it's more of like a like a transaction, like it's a service. It's a space that I can go use and then I'm done. Whereas what I felt in France was I go there and it seems like people were so involved in not only playing tennis but other sports. I saw a lot of basketball camps there. They were all next to each other. It seemed like they were really enmeshed in this like community building
around sports.
And
athletic center.
Yeah.
Like that.
it was also crazy that I think it was cement. Your courts were cement. So it tore up my knees. Like, it was so tough to play on that. Anybody who's ever played on cement, like, we have one by the University of Minnesota, is a different kind of world.
Well, I mean, let's just tell you a little bit quickly about that, because, so what we call those courts quick, as in, but they're actually not quick.
They're not.
They're very slow courts, hard courts. The reason why they're popular, I believe, in France, because that is the standard hard court in France. It's not like here where you have more of like a green set, US Open style, blue and green. Here in France is quick because it's the court that I think requires the least amount of maintenance. So it's cheaper. It's there and it doesn't cracks. There is no cracks on it. So I think it has something to do with cost and standardizing across the country so that people can play. Just like in the US, you expect a hard court to be the blue and green courts.
Yes.
And then for the same, in France, we also have like half of the courts are probably clay courts, and they're trying to also standardize that. Although it's a little bit different because that's expensive. So it's almost like we are at the both end of the spectrum. It's not a grass, but a good clay court is expensive and needs a lot of maintenance versus the quick one that is inexpensive and needs the least amount of maintenance. So I guess the balance of it, they chose it so that you have the opportunity to play on both while getting that price back to middle range, like one offset the other. But yes, like you said, it is not great for the knee. Then what do you think the US or like the USTA or the UTR or like the main governing bodies can do to improve the game of tennis?
In my experience, so as someone who grew up,
and as someone who coaches, as someone who actually worked for USTA in the northern section, so you've been involved.
Yeah, I've been involved, and I came from the grassroots community. Like both my parents had no idea about anything with tennis. They
know basketball though.
Yeah, middle class to like lower middle class at times. We didn't have the money for private lessons or things like that. I was lucky I was lucky to take advantage of the community programs that were in my area.
And you're giving back right now.
Oh yeah.
In many ways.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't know, how real can I be with this? I was a kid who didn't know tennis existed until elementary school. And essentially my mom came to me and said, hey, you have to do a summer sport. Like, which is it going to be? She held up a golf club and a tennis racket. And I was like, I'm not doing the golf club. So even at that young, I knew there was something about golf that turned me off.
Was that like the money or the stereotype?
I couldn't tell you. Like there was a perception even as like under 10 years old that I had about the sport of golf, but tennis would just seem so foreign to me, or it was the lesser of two evils that I decided to do that.
Okay.
And so when we got involved in it,
more exotic.
Yeah. And so who knows? Maybe I would have made a different decision if I had some sort of influence that was negative towards tennis. But that's neither here nor there. I chose to do tennis. And we had like a community feeder program, is Little Cardinal Tennis, that my now mentor has been doing for the last 20 some years, where you have high school kids in the community come out and teach basic skills or just provide a space for kindergarten to fifth graders to play tennis. So you got a bunch of kids on a court, and it's run by kids. It's messy, but it's not supposed to be like this super organized. It's just go out and play. Go out and play, get people to experience the sport, and I loved it. I loved it, and my mentor there saw that I loved it, and he watched me over the years. He watched me continue to choose it because of it afforded me the independence or whatever my personal reasons were for playing it. It aligned with me in a way that other sports didn't. and he saw an opportunity for me to take advantage of that. And so then he offered me on the tennis court. And so,
are you talking about the current head coach?
Yeah, the current head coach
of the Cardinal, Coon Rapids Cardinal High School. Coon Rapids Cardinal High School, little city north of Minneapolis. Great place, by the way. I was offered my first coaching opportunities over there multiple times. So very grateful for the opportunities. Go Cardinals.
Yeah.
Continue.
Well, you got me. You got me rambling now on my story. But to get back to like, what can we do to improve the game of tennis, right?
No, I think because it fits right in there. Because I do believe that it seems to me that 20 years ago when you were in that program, has tennis really evolved at the grassroots level?
Yeah.
It looks pretty much the same to me. When I go to France, it looks the same.
Okay.
It has not evolved. The structure is the same.
So that was me coming up through, high school, and then I got on the high school team and I started playing it. So throughout that whole time, I witnessed, without really understanding, I witnessed my parents struggle to find opportunities for me to play and to stay involved or to get more involved. I remember my parents drove around Minneapolis, essentially. We drove for almost an entire day looking for clubs and looking for facilities where we could, join a class. And it turned out like most of these options were too expensive for us as a family who was working on a single income, 4 brothers, like things. Yeah. We just didn't have the access.
What do you remember? Kind of like a price range of like, was it like the price was just like completely out of the question? That was just like
it wasn't sustainable.
It was not sustainable.
Yeah, and from the perspective of my parents, because as a kid I didn't know what the price was.
Yeah, but you have like brothers
and I asked my mom like how was that for her, and it was frustrating for her. It was she didn't know. She could see in her child the joy and the passion for something that I could call my own.
Right.
And she didn't know how to support that.
Yes.
And this is coming from an interracial couple, and I get into that, black father, white mother, who is, trying to make ends meet, and they did a great job of doing that. But then you get involved in this sport, and your child is doing well enough to where you want to support that growth, and the obstacle is there's not much more I can do for them financially to get them involved, so we have to do for ourselves. And so I literally I think my parents did a great job of not projecting that onto me. I had no idea.
I had safeguard you from the money pressure.
Right.
Yes.
And so I learned how to hit against a wall. The Coon Rapids courts are named after Bob Pivick. He's like the winningest coach in all of the school's history for girls tennis. But I remember the first day that I learned how to play against the wall, I was out there just hitting, and as a stupid young boy, I'm hitting as hard as I can.
Right.
And I'm not rallying because the wall's winning. It's always gonna win.
And also, like, put it into perspective that at the time there was no such a thing as YouTube.
Right.
There was no such a thing as, you don't go on the internet, or better yet, on your phone while you're on courts and look things up, which seems to be, by the way, a very great idea. But that was not a thing. Like, there was no such a thing as resources. Like, you had to physically go talk to somebody that you think may have the answer, just to have a hope to improve part of your game. Like, it's
and this was the issue, right? Is a lot of that information was gatekeeped. Or it could be perceived that way, is you had to know somebody who knew somebody to get you in somewhere to give you an opportunity to play. And if you weren't in the know, and if programs weren't marketed or advertised effectively in areas and provide, like there was a clear division between the classes in my case. So this guy came out on the court, and he saw that he wanted to help me out. So he taught me how to hit against the wall. And from that moment on, like, I now had a way to play tennis by myself.
Right.
And that, my parents saw that. And my dad, growing up in Queens, New York, or in the boroughs, he's a basketball player. Ooh. So his idea, or his approach to practicing a sport was essentially like, go to the court and all you need is a hoop. All you need is a hoop and a ball.
Right.
And for me, it was all you need is a racket, a ball, and a wall. And that was me for hours, hitting against the wall. Talk about some of the great tennis players who, and I'm not comparing, but but a lot of them hit against a driveway or a garage.
Right.
Like, that was essentially what I had to do, and I had no one else to, except for my mentors who were around to provide me with opportunities to play.
Yeah.
So that's just my experience. And as I got out of high school and I continued to play in college, and I got I started to work for the USTA and get involved in those grassroots programs and trying to grow the game of tennis. It was tough. It was eye-opening to see all the ways in which were, how would I say, like, restricted. Like, we're there's, you can edit that out, but like, it's hard for me to put my finger on any one thing that impedes our ability to grow the game of tennis. But a couple things that I have noticed is the marketing, right? We're not, all of the governing bodies of tennis are working sometimes independent of each other. And sometimes you need to do that given where you live and the people you're supporting or servicing. But like, there's not a unified front. There's not one clear established way to grow the game of tennis. There's not a lot of backing for that. We're not like reaching the masses in ways that we should. I think there's a lot of getting creative there. Tennis is also not normalized. It seems very classist. There's a clear division for people who don't have the means to play. Like I said with my story, like we weren't in the know, and we would never have been in the know if not for my parents or myself actively trying to seek it out, asking questions, advocating for yourself. Yeah. But if you don't even know that that's a possibility, it's very hard to get to that place. Yeah. And so, and then we have other sports. And this is the thing that's kind of like out of our control, is other sports are in more demand than tennis. Like football is the American sport. Baseball is the American sport. There are so many other sports that dominate the sporting realm. Right. That it's hard to compete against that marketing wise. Culturally, economically, it's hard to compete with that. And with a sport like tennis that doesn't really make money when you go out and play, matches, especially for high school or college, like people don't purchase tickets to go see a college tennis match. And we're seeing how that really affects tennis in the college realm. Right. It's tough to see, but I do understand. And I think that's what makes tennis so special in some ways. Like, we could talk all day about how we could improve the game of tennis, but I think given what is working against it, I think that's what makes it all the more special when you do get people to play it, or people do find joy in it. Is it feels very much like the underdog. Yes. And I love that. I love a lot of people love that.